Welcome back, coaches. This is the Football Coaching Podcast. I am Daniel Chamberlain, co-host, here with Joe Daniel, as always.
What's up, Coach?
Coach, it's that time of year. The coaching carousel is a spinning. We're watching chaos unfold everywhere here in Oklahoma. I'm sure it's the same up there, right?
No idea.
You don't pay attention to any.
I'm not in the loop. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not looking for a job. I'm not thinking about climbing the ladder. So I kind of get the reports of there was some movement. A lot of our movement happened like it was predetermined, I think, and it all happened pretty quickly. I don't, I couldn't tell you if anything's happened. Anybody's been hired lately. No, I don't know anything going on right now.
A side effect of me going to Owasso a couple of years ago and being in that circle is that, and then of course being on the podcasts, right? That has been huge for my career and my networking. But I kind of know people at all of those big schools in Tulsa now, which are all great football teams, and so
Sure.
I've been a little bit more conscious of the moves going on there, which coaches are going where, and assistants and coordinators and all. So it's been a pretty fun year to be outside looking in. Yeah, so it's fun. I don't know. There's a lot of forums and good stuff out there to read and watch people be ballistic about hires. I think
I stay away from all. Yeah.
All that gets a little out of hand, but
Ugh.
in general, it's pretty good. It's fun. So we are. What is this? This comes out around mid-February.
The clinic season.
Clinic season. I am at the time of recording this. I guess I'm about 3 months from giving my first ever live clinic, which I'm stoked about. Oh, maybe 2 months. I need to get on that a little bit faster. Beginning of April. I do back-to-back weekends with
Comes up
Kenny
fast, yeah.
Yeah, in Boston, and I think Milwaukee's the other one. So super excited to be doing those. Just talking offense, man. Talking kind of the stuff we've been talking about on the podcast and being multiple and shifts, moves, trades, blah, blah, blah. So that's exciting because now I have to get up in front of my peers that are all good at what they do and be like, here's how I do stuff. And then just wait for the boo.
Yeah. One of the things that's great is, the clinics, the only thing that'll happen at a clinic is if people will get up and walk out. But the only thing that'll happen when you're doing a clinic is, if there's a mass exodus, things have gone wrong. But they will say anything. They'll just kind of get up and walk out, and you'd be like, there were a lot less empty chairs when this started. That'll be your only clue, and it happens. Nah, probably not. Not at this deal.
I assume being a first timer, it's a lot like being a comedian, right? You may screw it up, but who cares? The gist is there, so I'm pretty happy with it.
It's kind of like anything, like the things that we're talking about it's like a head coaching interview. It's like there's a tremendous value in just going out and doing the interview.
For sure.
One of the things that we talk about, we just did a promotion in January called the Resolution Reset, which was built around a practice planning, the idea of practice and the idea that our players practice every day so that they are better when it is on the line. And our job is to, put them through a great practice. And there are things that we can do to get better at our knowledge, and that there are things that we can do to learn, and there are things that we can do to help our practice be better by preparing better for our practices. But there's not a lot of really good ways to practice coaching.
Right.
Because, when you're on the field running a practice, that's game day for you, right? That's when your work as a coach is getting done, is you're helping that kid prepare for the game. And then on game day, it's his game day, not yours. You have responsibility, but especially as a position coach, as a coordinator, there's a little bit more of a game-like feel for you because it's always a game-like feel, but you are calling plays and everything. But as let's say you're a position coach, you kind of put it all together and taught them the plays and everything. And you obviously are still coaching during the game, but you're not making a big impact like those 3 weeks in the summer did, in August did before the first game or whatever it is. So getting up in a clinic, and this is also the advantage of being in coaching forums, and we do our Talk Q&As and with JDFB, and any chance that you get to just talk ball with somebody. It's the advantage for me of working directly with all of these coaches that I work with, and of doing the podcast and talking. Once a week I'm talking football for an hour and a half, and you are too. I'm answering questions and doing chalk talks and all this sort of stuff. The advantage is that's your opportunity to, whether it is to hash out ideas or to teach, but to communicate your ideas to someone. Every chance that you get to do that is valuable. The only real chance that we have is your off-season workouts, your spring practice is a great example. I always talk about spring practice. I think should really be for the coaches more so than the players. Players will forget everything you do in spring practice by the time that August rolls around and you're starting over. So you should go out there and practice. And in our off-season workouts, we can practice stuff. And I always will tell the kids, like, hey, I'm just trying this out.
Yeah.
Don't know if it's going to work. I'm going to try it out. This is my practice time. But clinic talks are a chance for you to practice communicating and teaching to someone else and finding out if those words resonate, because 100% that if a room full of coaches don't get it, it ain't going on the field.
That's right.
And maybe even worse is if all the coaches think this is awesome. That might be even worse because then, they're on the Twitter coach porn wagon, and that doesn't help your players either. So somewhere in between is but it's a very, very valuable win or lose the clinic.
Yeah, I'm stoked. I think it's just part of that practice of just like trying to be comfortable being uncomfortable, right? Always,
Sure.
That's the big part for me, is like already getting on the podcast is pretty big, and that's just like the next level, because now we're just staring at people besides ourselves who have the chance to show body expression, nonverbal cues and all that good stuff. But I'm really not sweating it too much. I'm gonna get up there and we're gonna kill it, and then do a couple weekends in a row, and it'll be a lot of fun. But we're on tonight to talk hiring a staff, and not only hiring a staff, but like getting the right guy for the job, filling out your coaching staff. This is one of those conversations that can be so variable. It can go down so many different routes because everyone needs different positions filled, and personality conflicts, and scheme comes in. You don't want to mix. If you're a flex bone guy, you're probably not going to hire an air raid guy just because, like, that's just going to ask for problems. You probably should mix it up, but you won't. Just a lot of things out there that can go well and go poorly together. So I think it's a really good conversation, especially right now. Like I said, the carousel is going, so I think it's a great time to just talk about filling in those empty spots. Before we do, though, let's pay some bills.
Yeah, go to JoeDanielFootball.com/system. We've got the guide to building your ultimate defensive system as you're putting that together now that we are in the full-on off-season. If you're going to be going to clinics, you need to have that framework in place before you go to the clinic so that you know where you're plugging in things in, where you're getting those ideas, where they're going to go. And how they fit into the system that you are either installing or already exists and you are going to continue developing. And so that is the ultimate guide to building your ultimate defensive system. I can't remember which order it goes in right now because I said it the wrong way once. But in there, you're going to find out what a system is, what goes into a defensive system, the 5 critical mistakes that you must avoid in order to be successful, and how to install your defensive system for the upcoming 2025 season. So check it out at JoeDanielFootball.com/system.
Awesome. Talk about athletic speed movement here. If you haven't heard about it, you're not listening to us because we preach it all the time. Athletic Speed Movement is Del Basquet's 46-ish years of, well, doing just that, making kids faster, making more athletic in speed and in movement. It's the perfect plan. Look, there's a lot of guys out there just using track, right, as a way to make your kids faster. But let's be honest, your pulling guard is not going and running the 100. He's not going to run the 200. It's not things he's going to do. So telling him to go get faster in track season is a little, well, it's not going to happen. So athletic speed movement is for every single kid on the field. If your punter needs to run down the ball after he kicks it, it's for him. He can run fast. Your pulling guard can run fast. Your center can quick. You talk about tackles needing a pass set. Like, it doesn't matter what position you talk about. We're going to add speed and agility to those kids over at athleticspeedmovement.com. Jump over there and sign up today. Patreon.com/Chamberlain Football Consulting. I have tiers for everybody. If you need some help doing anything in football, from graphics to developing a quarterback program, whatever you need help with, let's have a conversation. Moving on. Question 1. So before we start talking about what the right coach and how to get good guys, et cetera, we have to go ahead and just toss out what is the wrong guy. So what exactly would be the wrong guy to go out and try to hire, the wrong dude to put on staff with you?
I think the first thing is that there are wrong guys, and it's not always obvious. And the important thing to remember here is, let's say that your school is giving you 10 coaching stipends, which is on the high end for a lot of coaches. Let's say that you have 10 coaching stipends to fill. And maybe they label them as JV or middle school or whatever. That really doesn't matter, right? None of that should matter. You should have a program, and you should be able to plug those stipends in where you need them. But just because you have 10 stipends doesn't mean you should hire 10 coaches at all costs and just take anybody.
Right.
The wrong people often are in the form of volunteers, but not always. Or they're in the form of lay coaches who aren't teachers, or they're in the form of people who haven't, dads can often be the wrong coaches. The community guys can often be the wrong coaches. People who are not really, people who have not shown a desire for football to be a career until very recently, that's kind of an indicator that we need to look more. Not to say not to hire them, but we need to look more into this. You, number one, above all else, is you do not want to hire somebody who is going to become a distraction from anything that is going on. People that are very, very, very plugged into the community can be beneficial, but they can also not be beneficial because they have conversations in the community that will overstep the bounds and discuss things that shouldn't leave your office. Not because they're like, I mean, I tell my wife everything that goes on, right, within the coaching staff. I tell her everything.
Right.
And I tell a lot of my friends, if we're having a beer and talking, I'll tell them a lot. Well, they live, like my buddies live in Alexandria. They don't talk to anybody. They don't know anything. It's just a sounding board for me. You hire a guy who's from the community who's a sounding board. It's the guys in the community. He's lived there his whole life. Those are the people he knows. And he'll talk to them like he's talking to a friend, because he is. But that friend is going to repeat that information. Most people will eventually repeat that information. And so if it's just a guy in the community and not a professional, there's a very big difference. If you have a professional that lives in the community, that's different. If you have a guy in the community who has decided that he wants to be a football coach, his kid's a football player and he wants to, whatever, you have to be very, very, very careful with that. That will become a distraction. You got to figure out what his motives are.
I can say that I've now been through 2 programs that had that guy.
Oh, that guy's everywhere. Yeah,
They're
absolutely.
never that good of a coach.
They're
It's like
also usually
someone
not like
along the
vindictive
way.
or anything.
Yeah, no, it's always like I really need to put. Look, I was on a staff that guy was an O-line coach, and I'm an O-line coach, and the head coach was like, "Well, he was here before you.
We have him, yeah.
I'm gonna use him I'll make you the assistant." And then when we tried working together, it was like, buddy, we see O-line completely different, and what you're teaching doesn't necessarily fit the scheme we're in. And I know the scheme we're in because I've been in it for 2+ years. That's not correct, but it's not my job. Like at that point, I'm the assistant, so I just have to go, "Hey, head coach, either I need to fix it or I need to go. Just put me somewhere else. Let me go do something I can actually make a change." And that's the hard part. What you're talking about, having those community guys, is you get to where it's like I can't really let them go because that's that's a negative in the community. Might even cost you your own job,
Right.
but they're not really a benefit to have either, and they might cost you your job.
Yeah. Well, and so what you're talking about is somebody who's already there, and that's not really what we're
Right.
But the point remains: don't bring that guy on staff
Exactly.
because then he's going to be already there, and he can't get rid of him. Right? That's what happens. Is somebody brought him on years ago, and he just now is a part of the staff, and nobody can get rid of him, and he's not a positive overall.
Right.
So, community guy is one to look out for. Dad is a big one to look out for. Guy comes in. We dealt with this a lot in Prince George because of the military community. And so there wasn't a chance for these guys to establish themselves as coaches before they got there. He might have been, if Dad might have been in Iraq for 2 years or deployed for, Dad might have been gone for a year or two.
Right.
And now Dad's back, and maybe his role has changed, and he's got the time, and he sees an opportunity to be with his son. That's all great. We're not we're not the Make-A-Wish Foundation so that you can spend time with your son. Like, we have a job to do. So that being said, just as an aside, hiring people with military experience has almost always worked out. Not 100%, but I'd say a higher percentage than hiring anybody else. People with military experience has worked out more than hiring people with playing experience, but hiring people with, so because just they have the leadership, they have those things already there. And,
Right.
and so that generally a maturity that doesn't come in, you're talking about older, you're not talking about hiring a 19-year-old. You're talking about hiring somebody who's got kids, somebody who's been in the military for a long time. So you're generally going to get a good person. Not always. That's not 100% either, but nothing is. But those are people that you might want to hire, but you might want to separate Dad. If it's just somebody who, like, dads are just always, you've got to have that conversation, and the conversation that you have during the hiring process in March isn't the same as what's going to happen on a Friday night in September. You've got to make sure, especially in year one, until you know that person, that they are separated from their child. I am not hiring you to coach your son. You may coach somebody else, and your son may be on the team. Preferably, kids on varsity, put coach on JV or middle school, right?
Right.
Separate them that way. But those can be the wrong guy. Just in general, anybody who doesn't have something to contribute, significant to contribute, or a strong desire to learn is, and that has to be demonstrated in certain ways, is probably a bad hire. I see staffs. We've played teams where there's 25 guys over there, and they're a 3A school like us, and there's 25 guys over there with coaching shirts on, and it's like there's no way that all 25 of those guys are contributing in a positive manner. It's too many. It's too many for a school that only has 30 players. Like, it's ridiculous. It's just everybody's getting a better seat. You don't need all that. You don't want all that. And I see, you look over across the field, if you have 25 guys and 30 players, I can tell you, we have, 10 coaches or whatever we have, 9 coaches. They're not all there on Friday night. We have more jobs now. We have an analytics guy, and we have a guy running the iPads with Huddle. Like 5 years ago, we didn't need 9. Now at least 9 of them have a job.
Yeah.
And in fact, that we don't always have all of them on the sidelines. Right? They're doing other stuff, but you don't need that many guys to coach a football game. And if you don't need them to coach a football game, you don't need them in practice. So the important thing is that you're hiring people who are going to be a positive. Do not hire anyone who is a distraction. If you have you will regret this 1,000 times over. If you have a gut feeling that you're not sure about this one, don't hire them. If you do the right thing, which we'll talk about in a minute, and call all of their references and then call people they didn't put down as references, and you have multiple reports that make you feel uneasy, because generally people aren't going to say outright bad things. Nobody wants to ruin somebody's life, right? Nobody wants to say, I can't hire that guy. Not many people, right? Not many people want to. So most people, when you call them for a reference, are going to say the bad things in the nicest way possible. But if you get an uneasy feeling from a couple of their references, or even people that they've worked with in the past, don't hire them. Don't hire them. You don't need to be, again, you're not Make-A-Wish. You don't need to help this guy revive his career. That's not, because it probably won't happen. Whatever problems he had before probably will have again. So if you don't have a good feeling about somebody, don't bring them on. If you don't know what their motives are, don't bring them on. If they have had poor results in other places, don't bring them on. And I don't mean win-loss. I mean relationships with kids, relationships with parents, relationships with players, all that sort of stuff. If they're not a net positive, if you don't know for sure hiring this person that they are going to be a positive for this football program, don't hire them. Unfortunately, it would be nice. Unfortunately, the way that the legal system works and everything, it would be great if we could bring a guy on a trial basis and just say, hey, come work, come be around for a month. But you're not allowed to be around the kids until that volunteer contract or that contract is signed, right? Nobody will allow a guy to just be around kids and coach them for a month with no contract. And once that contract is signed, that's a year contract. So you don't have that ability. Maybe youth coaches do. We don't, at high school level. So that would be great to bring a guy on for a trial period. Say, hey, come out and coach spring ball. Come out and coach for 2 weeks, and we'll see how it goes. Watch, even though you can't do that, watch what people do when they're just in the building, especially if they're a parent or somebody who's been around, who they gravitate towards. You do not need front runners. And front runners are the guys who will go gravitate towards the best athletes in the room and put all their attention on them. That is a highly, highly, highly easy to see indicator that this is not the guy you want. You got one kid over here looks D1. You got 5 kids over here that look like trash. You need those 5 kids over here to get better if you're going to win games. D1's already D1. If they gravitate to D1 and want to lock onto that success, it's not your guy. It's just not your guy. Just Don't fill it out because because you can fill it out. Don't hire guys just because they ask. If you don't need somebody, hire good people when good people are available, for sure. But if you don't hear angels singing, you don't need to do it.
Awesome. Part 2. So
part 1. That's it. Just don't hire the wrong guys.
So then that leads us right into what is the right guy then. So what are we looking for when we put out that thing? We get all those applications, and we've got slots to fill.
Well, I mean, it's the guy who has all the checks all the boxes, number one. But I mean, you hire. There's a few things. Hire the personality and hire the. Honestly, I would say hire the personality first. You mentioned, I don't want to hire an air raid guy if I'm a wing T or a flex bone guy or something like that. I couldn't care less. First of all, football coaching is like teaching. It really is. It's more so. But like, as somebody who taught every subject there was in the social studies area, and then turned around and taught just about every subject, at least at the lower levels of math. I taught 4 different maths in 2 years. I taught statistics. I taught computer math. I taught algebra 1. I taught geometry in the 2 years with, just a math practice 2 after 7 years of teaching history. If you can teach, you can teach. Right. If you can coach, you can coach. I don't really care. I really don't care about your X's and O's. Hiring a coordinator, that's different. But when we're just talking about filling out a staff, when I'm first looking to hire people, hire somebody who has the right personality. I don't care about their X's and O's that much.
I think that's a really good way to look at it, is like, because you've got to be, honestly, you coach 10 to 15 games with this person. You go to, I don't know how many practices that is. So, 40 to 80 practices, whatever, with this guy. But there's a lot of days in between there. You've got to work beside this guy. He's developing people. I think a lot of times, like, these kids only get one high school career, and you need to have people in the building that are, you said it earlier, net positive. But the way I look at it is something Coach Ridley taught me a long time ago, and that was, every day you get better, you get worse. Well, it's no different here. Every day your program gets better, it gets worse. So is this person going to make your team better or worse each and every day? So I've never really thought about it. Like, hire the personality, hire the guy you want to hang out with, that you can hang out with. There's nothing worse than work and being like, I truly don't like this human being. What I mean?
That's,
and generally it's a, I think about a lot about like a moral compass or a like overall good person. You need to hire that guy because that's way more influential than any X's and O's.
Yeah. So personality wise, I mean, when I say, I don't want it to just be, I don't mean just like, this is a fun guy. Like I can drink a beer with this guy.
Right.
Hire somebody who has the personality of the coach that fits your staff, not the X's and O's. So if we're talking about working long hours, you better hire somebody who's a workaholic, who wants to work long hours and be in, like, you better not hire me. If you run 4-hour practices and you have 8-hour meetings, don't hire me.
Right.
It's not going to work out. We can go have a beer. I'm pretty fun after a drink or two, but we don't drink during practice. So that ain't going to help you. And I'm going to be gone to go get a drink while you're in your 4th hour of practice, because I ain't doing that.
I love it.
Hire somebody who wants to do the work. Hire somebody who has the relationship abilities, and as best you can find that out, again, from contacting contacting references and what you know about them in the field that you get. Somebody who can have a relationship with kids that's a positive. Somebody who understands the relationship that we have with kids. It's one of the hardest things is to hire. There's absolutely nothing wrong with hiring 21, 22-year-olds. And I know some of us, it seems even more common now. Sometimes we're bringing on, kids that just graduated and they're going into a trade, they're staying in town, and we'll bring them on, and they're a mature kid, but they're still a kid. And understanding that coach player relationship, we're not friends. Because way too many, you do not want guys that want to be friends with your players. That's a no-no. We're not friends. We are not friends at all. So you want to find guys that can have those relationships with, the adult to player relationship appropriate. That they have a leadership ability is always a good thing. That they have a positive approach is important, unless they're just an old curmudgeon. And then, hey, that's always fun. It's always important to have the one old curmudgeon on the staff. But by the way, I'm actually pretty positive usually.
Is that right?
I actually am. Yeah. I usually, I get annoyed with the people who immediately go into, like disaster mode. I'm like, just relax.
That's true.
But you want the guys who have all that stuff first. So when I talk about personality, it's all those things. And those, by the way, will show up if you're hiring a football coach who hasn't coached before. Let's say you're hiring that dad, right? Okay, cool. Let me talk to your boss. Let me talk to your coworkers. Let me talk to your friends. I'm going to make some calls, because all of that stuff will show up anywhere. If you have leadership, you have leadership ability. If you have a presence, if you are, if you understand boundaries and relationships, that stuff will show up. That's not a exclusive to football. So you can hire somebody who, all those things we said before, a guy from the community, a dad, guy who doesn't have any coaching experience. You can hire all of those things by talking to people who know them from other walks of life and finding out what they're like.
It sounds almost like too simple, but I feel like people don't use that enough. Right?
Not nearly enough. People don't like calling, and often will not call references.
Yeah, which is wild.
Which is insane.
Go ahead. Sorry. I'm leaning pretty heavily on my references. Like, you don't know me. I'm still too new at this. You know what I mean? If I go out and apply for a job,
almost nobody calls references to, which is interesting. Like, almost nobody contacts references to lift a candidate up. They only call references as like a yes or no, right? Is this guy a yes or no? They don't call to learn more and find out if this guy is a maybe yes or a maybe no, or if this guy's a definite yes. It's just a totally like binary yes or no. There's no in between when I call references. I get a good feeling, I get a bad feeling from him. And that's not what should happen when you're hiring. You should be finding out more about these guys.
For sure.
And that should be affecting, like, you should be asking questions, interviewing the reference. We feel like we are, I think what a lot of people do is they feel like they are bothering the reference, right? They don't want to waste their time. And that's a weird thing, because I assume if you put them down as a reference, that's somebody who like if I put you on my resume, if I had one, as a reference, it's because I think you like me and will say good things. That's why you need to go outside of the ones that are on the resume. But like, I put old head coach down, and it's not because he was my head coach. It was because we got along really well, and I think you'll have good things to say. And I assume, at least I know the people that I put down would love to help me out. They're my colleagues, but I didn't put down everybody I've ever coached with, right? I put down the 3 guys that I had the best relationship with in coaching. 3 guys who I've been through a lot with, and they would love to help me get that job. So call them and talk to them. Don't just, they probably want to talk about them, and then you can talk to them because they're probably football coaches too. But even if they're, their boss from another job or something, talk to them.
I love the mixture people put on their resumes because like mine is guys that have told me like if you put me down, I'm going to tell them that you're not ready because no one's ready to be that first time head coach. Bill Blankenship is one that always says that, right? No one is ever ready. When people call me as a reference, I say, nope, he's not ready. And neither is anybody else in that stack
Right.
if they're a first time, right? So I'm okay with that. Like, I agree. Call references. One, because I think it gives you a high, it gives you the ceiling on this person. Like you said, it's mainly going to be people that are going to say all the good things. But it at least gives you a counter argument to the one guy in the community that's like, oh no, I met that guy a long time ago and he was a jerk or whatever. He yelled at a kid one time or whatever the other guys are saying. At least you know that you have multiple data points against whatever that happens to be saying. We didn't really talk about you said X's and O's don't matter as much. Early on, I would have probably said like, yes, I always want to hire a guy that's really, really good at X's and O's. But the more experience I gain at this, it's like that's a weird situation in which you don't know what they've learned. You don't know how they see football. I have been on a staff it was a guy that knew a lot of football, but he couldn't buy into what we were doing. And so his vast amount of experience meant nothing. It was a negative. It actually negated what everyone else was trying to do, which is, kind of like early on, I was talking about just that chemistry of, are they bought into what you're doing? I think that's what, if you get someone that looks like that, that's probably more realistic of a hire than the guy that just has years and years of experience. And I think we also have to talk about like what people's plans are, right? If you go out to hire a guy, I don't know. What would you say, Joe, is like the average amount of time that you're looking for a coach to stay? If you're just hiring a guy today on staff, do you expect him to leave next year? Or is there like a internal, no, I can get 3 years out of this guy?
There's a consideration of that, but unless you have a very, very large pool of people, hire the guy that's going to help you win this year. I go back to our head coach has had tremendous success hiring people who recently lost a head coaching job or have been a head coach in the past. And some of them wanted to get another head coaching job. Some of them didn't. But guys who have been head coaches are very valuable because they have been frustrated by the same things that frustrate you, and they know how hard it is to find good help.
Right.
Most guys who have been head coaches, not all, most, in my experience, can look past the X's and O's. Most of them, because they are there with you, have experienced failure at some point. Otherwise, they'd probably still be, coasting while the statue's being built in their ninth state championship.
Right.
So they understand the ups and downs. They have a certain maturity. They know the limitations that are put on you. They know the stress that you're going through as a head coach. They will help to take things off your plate sometimes. If you're hiring a head coach, a former head coach, most, not all, at the high school level, especially small schools, most head coaches, former head coaches, could come in and coach any position. Just like we just talked about. Teaching is teaching. Coaching is coaching. If you understand what you're doing. If you really know how to do it, I can coach any position in any scheme. And I'll figure it out and I'll stay a day ahead. And as long as the other coaches and me or the coordinator and me are on the same page, we'll be fine. It's when we get off on the wrong page and I think it's this and they didn't understand it. And then we're going, oh, what are you talking about? That's when it's annoying, because that's communication breakdown, which is really important as well. So when I say X's and O's don't matter, they don't need to be an extremely knowledgeable X's and O's coach, but what I mean more is what X's and O's they have experience in doesn't matter. If I'm hiring again, talking just a general position coach, if I'm hiring a defensive line coach, I don't see any, as long as he understands, how things work, can run drills and do all that sort of stuff. And this is not necessarily a former head coach, but anybody who's going to come in and learn my scheme and run my scheme the way that I want it done and run my drills the way that I want it done, who's going to communicate with me, who's going to, if I say film the drills, they're going to film the drills. If we can sit down and look at the film, we can talk the film. If somebody's going to do all that and wants to learn my system and wants to learn my scheme, then we're going to be great. Where the issue comes in with X's and O's, and specifically air raid, flex bone, pistol power offense, one back system, Westcott, whatever, where that comes in. One is if you have somebody so tied into one system. So let's say we're hiring a guy for my staff who's been coaching air raid for 20 years and never done anything else, and believes that air raid is the greatest of all time and everything else is a mistake. He's probably not the guy, because he's going to be frustrated with me because I don't like air raid. I mean, I like air raid, but I'm not going to run any of that stuff, because he's going to be in every meeting going, we should run mesh. And I'm going to be going, you should leave. Because we're not doing that. We have plays that look like mesh, but they're not. They're object receiver routes. They're tagged. Looks like mesh. It's not mesh. It's just crossers to beat man coverage. Mesh can beat anything. I can only run this to beat man coverage because it's just crossers. It's an object receiver route. Different concepts. So if you have the guy who's just so committed to his way of doing things that he can't get past that, he's probably not a good fit anywhere for you if you don't run that stuff. But where you can get into a lot of trouble is if you go to hire a coordinator. If you are hiring a coordinator from a different school of thought, you should be hiring that coordinator to run his school of thought. Don't hire a coordinator who has 10 years of air raid experience and wants to run air raid and bring him in and say, we're a double wing team. That's not going to work. That's going to be a problem. Don't hire a 40 front coach, a 4-4 coach, and say, yeah, we're going to be a 3-4. Because just see it more on the defensive side than the offensive side. But it's going to, that's the only time that X's and O's matters. If you're trying to fit somebody who has one ideology and doesn't want to change it into another ideology, that's where you'll run into problems.
Yeah. And there's a lot of them. There's a lot of those situations out there, right? You just brought up fronts, but if you're box versus spill, if you're like, are you a zone dropper or man?
Yeah, man or zone.
So much stuff, right? Yeah. That can go wrong. So you just realize, those are great conversations to have ahead of time. That the coordinator versus assistant is definitely a different animal, just because I think the expectations that you have at hiring that level, right? Unless like I'm taking a guy under my wing, he's going to be the coordinator because I can't call both sides of the ball, so I can develop him. But otherwise, like, you think you would just hire them and cut them loose, right? That just seems like the thing to do. But it's definitely two trains of thought, I suppose, when you go into hiring people. Let's jump into this last part here, just because it does encompass all of this, and just how do we put all this together? So we're trying to make these hires and fill voids and gaps that we have. So how do we get all that put together?
Well, I think, you start with plugging guys in where they need to be. And it starts with your varsity program. But you don't want to have everybody that's a good coach on the varsity and throw everybody else to JV, freshman, middle school, whatever.
Right.
So you got to figure out where everybody fits. You can look at things like, I don't want the dad being on the same level as his son. That's an easy one to move guys around. Younger guys often will be on the JV. If you got a 22-year-old guy who just came out of college, JV, freshman, those are kind of easy ones, right? That's kind of easy, no brainer. Put them in the middle school. But you put a 22-year-old on the middle school and just tell him good luck. Depending on what your middle school program's like, he may get eaten alive, right? He may not be able to. So, do I have an older guy who can go down there and it's his retirement gig? Because middle school, the practices are a little stressful, but you only practice a couple of days a week. You only got like six or eight games on the schedule. You don't start practicing until, this is the way our middle school works. And it's not the way everywhere. Start practicing a little later, and then you can kind of help out with varsity. So middle school can be a little bit of a retirement gig too. In some cases. Now, like our middle school coach is very, very, very involved. So it's different. He's young. His dad works with him. He doesn't have to do all this crap anymore, right? He already went through this. So figuring out what level everybody goes on, where that fits, and getting a good mix of maturity and enthusiasm. Getting, don't just put the two youngest guys on the lowest level and hope it works out. Don't put the guys with the least experience on the lowest level, because you need to be developing players at the same time. Then you start to look at where how the personalities are going to work. I don't think from year to year, I don't think anything should be static. I think it's good at the high school level. I think it's good for guys to coach different positions, to move around and do some different things. Like, it's one thing if you've got a guy that's a quarterback guy or an O-line guy. He's just a guy that's what he loves and he's passionate about it, and that's great. Most guys might have one position that they really fall into that with, and then anything else, like I love O-line. Not that I couldn't coach another position, but I love O-line and I want to be the offensive line coach. On the defensive side, were I the coordinator, I would want to coach the safeties if I was the coordinator. But again, if I was the defensive coordinator, I don't know if I would be coaching the offensive line. It just depends on how things go. But as a defensive position assistant, I don't care. You can put me in the linemen, you can put me in the linebackers, you can put me in the corners, you can put me in the safeties, whatever system, I don't care. I'll figure it out. And I'll coach it. Doesn't really matter to me.
Right.
So, now you might have somebody who, let's say you have a young guy who just finished playing and he played defensive line. Probably want him to be your defensive line coach because he has no real knowledge outside of that realm.
Right.
Like that's so fitting guys where they're comfortable. Like we had a great staff this year. We had a mix of our head coach who's coached everything. I've coached just about everything. Our defensive coordinator has coached just about everything. And then we brought in two older coaches, one who's coached he knows football, but he's scheme agnostic, right? He has no ego. He will coach in anything and learned it and go. And really both another coach came in. He hadn't coached in a while. He's older, but he hadn't coached in a while. But he came in and just kind of, he spent like half the season just kind of getting back into it. And then it was the same kind of deal. Like he was just going to, because he was getting back into it, he'd do whatever. He was almost like a young coach, but with the maturity. And then like I have coaches coming to JDFP all the time who've been out of the game for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. And, maybe they got out because their kids were young and now their kids have gotten older and they're looking to get back in. And it's like, it takes a while to acclimate back to the game. We had another guy who was a head coach that came down from Minnesota. He's younger, had the head coaching experience, but younger guy, D-line, O-line guy. And that's what he did. And he slotted right into that. Like our head coach went through and slotted everybody in. And I think one of the things that he does as a head coach, now he does as much as he can as a head coach to not have, he doesn't want to be the coordinator. He wants people to have responsibilities and jobs. When I was a head coach, I was the coordinator. But in our first year here, we had two guys with coordinator experience. Like he was fortunate that I'd been an offensive coordinator. Another guy had been a defensive coordinator. He could do that. It's sometimes you got to figure out what as the head coach, I think what you need to do is figure out how you can let go, how much you can let go of. And then you need to look at what you have, plug everybody in. This is why I think as a head coach, you need to be able to do anything, because you need to plug everybody in where they're most comfortable, where they're going to be most successful. And then you need to stick yourself in the spot that's left. If it's left. If it's not, then you can sit back and be a head coach. But most likely in a small school, especially a school that's rebuilding or a school that's trying to come back, or whatever, new school, whatever, new program, rebuilding program, you've got to be able to plug yourself in. All right, I got a young guy who's a linebacker coach. I got my defensive coordinator. He's going to coach the safeties. I got to be the defensive line coach. I got to stick myself in there, and I got to be a great defensive line coach. It's different, but I can do it. Or I need a corners coach, or whatever I need. And then on the offensive side, it's like, who can coach offensive line? Start there. Don't worry about the quarterbacks. Start with who is going to run this offensive line and who's going to do the best job. And if it has to be you, it has to be you. But as a head coach, but everything revolves around that. There's so many, you got to be able to coach the offensive line. Nothing else matters. Not nearly as much. And then you look at things like, what's your receiver core like? We had a receiver core, and Chris Chestnut was our receivers coach. You met him at FCA, coaching in Division I now. We had a receiver core that was rough, extremely talented, but academically, maturity, junior college, it was rough. And he might as well have put a little couch over there by the receiver drills. There was one kid needed to lay down on the couch and just talk for a little while every day. If you need a guy like that, regardless of Chestnut was a great receivers coach too. You just happen to have that ability as well, which is what makes him a great football coach.
Yeah.
If you have a group, whether it's your receivers, whether it's your quarterback, whether it's your offensive line, which is highly unlikely, but possible, I guess. Maybe all of your offensive linemen don't want to be offensive linemen. You have somebody who makes them excited about being offensive
Coach,
lineman.
make me tight end.
And you've just got to put that guy there with the offensive line. You've got, personality-wise, those groups, put a guy who can handle that group. Don't put the guy in teaching. There's always the teachers who they know their stuff. Like when I was teaching math, there was the old girl. She knew her stuff, and she taught 5 classes of calculus and whatever, because she couldn't do an Algebra 1 Part 1 with sophomores who were taking Algebra 1 because
they have
to, and they needed to graduate eventually. She couldn't manage that class. She knew everything. So this is where X's and O's don't matter as much, right? She knew everything. Did she know more about Algebra 1 than me? 100%. More about class management? She's been doing it longer. She doesn't do it as well. Maybe it's, maybe I couldn't control a room full of calculus kids.
Right.
I doubt it.
Sit over there with your calculator and be
probably
quiet.
Can. But I could control a room full of the kids who nobody else wanted to teach. And so unfortunately for me, I was the right person for the job there. And so when you look at it, you don't always just go, this is the best receivers coach. They're coaching receivers. You go, I know you know everything in the world about receivers, but you're a nerd and they will eat you alive. You get over here and you look at how positions work together. I can put somebody less experienced with the running back in my system. Now, if you're an air raid, maybe it's the receivers and the quarterbacks. In my system, in Indy time, the quarterbacks and the running backs are going to be together all the time. So the running backs are very rarely. So the running backs, for me, in the way that I want to run things, the running backs are either doing exchange drills with the quarterback or they're doing blitz pickups with the offensive line. So the running backs coach doesn't have to be alone. very much. So then that may work out for you to, let's say you're the head coach and the offensive coordinator and the quarterback coach. You might want to put the most experienced guy at the running backs because you can go do head coach, offensive coordinator stuff, check up on the offensive line and leave him with quarterbacks. So how do we manage all of these people putting, if I know I got a great quarterback coach, I can put an experienced guy with the running backs. I've got my tight ends H-backs coach. That's what we use as a tight end / H-back coach. And I know that he's going to be going back and forth between offensive line and receivers. So I could use a guy who's less experienced there. Or what we did was take the offensive line coach B. And so because I was offensive coordinator and we had an extra O-line guy, he was the tight ends H-backs coach. But then we would go to 7-on-7 where offensive coordinator goes to 7-on-7 and he's the pass protection offensive line guy. And then he comes back, when we go back to team, now he's back looking at the tight ends and H-backs when they're doing team stuff, blocking, and I go back to offensive line or go back to calling plays or whatever. So organizing that staff is where does everybody need to fit to fill in all the holes, to mesh with the right guys, always with the mind that the one that matters is wins and losses on varsity and development of the other program. Wins and losses matter on JV, on freshmen, on middle school. Kids want to play more if they win. All that stuff helps. But at the end of the day, it is the only reason wins and losses matter is because it helps bring the kid back the next year. What really matters is developing them as a football player and getting the two things. You talked about with Bill Blankenship. I got 50 freshmen. I expect to have 50 sophomores next year. Right?
That's right.
I get two things. If I give you 30 kids in the 8th grade, I want 30 ninth graders next year, and I want them to be better football players than they are right now. That's it.
Maybe 35 because they better bring a buddy with them because this place is
so
cool.
But that's my job as a head coach, right? My job as the head coach is to do the recruiting. But if 30 of them come in, I want 30 of them to come back, and then I'll try to add 10 more. But yeah, that's the big thing is I don't coach at places that have 30 kids in a class, so we'd have almost every male in the building, but not in the band. But
they can wear that football uniform to do the halftime show.
Sure,
some people do it.
So plugging all the pieces in and organizing the staff, and that's why again, don't go out and hire. I was thinking when I see listings for jobs and it's like we're hiring a defensive line coach, and I'm like, what if there is like a super capable coach out there? Obviously, if there's a super capable coach out there, they should be able to coach defensive line. But like, what if there's a super capable offensive line coach who comes in? Like, could you move? Like, I'm here to hire the best coach. This is like, unless you just desperately need a coordinator, you don't have one, I guess. But I mean, to me, hiring coaches at the high school and at the youth level, bringing somebody on staff, if we're comparing it to the draft, best available. We're taking the best available off the board. We're not looking to fill our rush end spot. We're not looking to get a new left tackle. Best available. Who's the highest one on the board? And then when we get the 5, the 6, the 7, the 10 best available coaches, or the 2, whatever situation is, we get the best available coaches. Then we plug them in, where they feel most comfortable, where they're going to. You're good coaches, you're really good coaches. You're going to say, hey, where do you feel comfortable? And they're going to say, I can coach anything.
Yeah.
I'll say, like, where do I want to coach? I want to coach offensive line, and I like coaching safeties, but I like coaching linebackers. I'd love to go back and work with defensive line. It's been a few years since I worked with defensive line. I've never directly coached corners. I've always been involved with the corners because of being a coordinator, but I've never been the corners coach. That would be a fun thing for me to do, depending on, I would just love to get in the details of that. On the offensive side, like, I love coaching offensive line. That's what I want to do. but I've never been the receivers coach. Like, I've never gotten to go, like, same thing with the corners. I've never gotten to just get into like, I would love to be on a staff that has so many coaches, and it's like my retirement gig, and they're like, you're the running backs coach. And I'd be like, cool, let me figure out how to do this, because I just take the kid who can run the best. And from my standpoint, now I know all of, because of being a coordinator, I know how the play is supposed to work, and I talk to the kid about how the play is supposed to work. But I've never worked with him day in and day out through drill work. I'd love to be able to come back and say, after a year of knowing exactly how the play is supposed to work and teaching it, because I feel like I could take a running back. I feel like I could take a receiver and teach him how his routes mesh up with the quarterback in a way that somebody who doesn't have the experience of the system, again, would be my system. Or if I was coaching another system, I would have to learn it, learn how. But teaching that receiver how it meshes up to where somebody who's only coached receivers wouldn't have all of that. I would love to coach the running backs, because I would mesh up with how the alignment and all the little things that go into the timing of the play, and how that works with the offensive line in a way that most running backs coaches don't focus on meshing and creating that beautiful, like, movement between running back and offensive line, and the hole, hitting the hole as it's opening up instead of hitting the hole at its widest so that it closes in and now it's a 2-yard gain. Like, I would love to do all that stuff. So I can coach anything, and I can be enthusiastic about coaching anything. And I think any good experienced coach can do that. Your less experienced coaches, you got the guy fresh out of college. What do you feel comfortable coaching? And he played defensive line. He's going to be like, defensive line, I think. The worst guy to hire, here we go, back to the beginning. The worst guy to hire is the guy who has very limited coaching experience and thinks he knows everything. Like, I always encourage coaches, when you go in an interview for
Hasn't fallen off the cliff yet.
What's that?
Said he hasn't fallen off the cliff yet.
No. Right. He hasn't. Yeah, he has not realized what he doesn't know what he doesn't know yet. I will get guys who are trying to get their first coaching job as an assistant, and they will be like, I think this school runs a 4.25, and I've got an interview next week, so I want to get your 4.25 system. Don't do that. Go in there, tell them I've never run the 4.25. I look forward to it. I want to know everything about it. I want to learn everything from you. Because when I'm hiring an inexperienced assistant, I am hiring somebody that I expect to teach. I don't expect you to know anything. I don't want you to know anything. And if I go to hire you and you come in and you've never coached, or you coached 1 year, and you start telling me everything that you know about coaching, I'm going to be like, cool, I don't need you. You don't know what you don't know. So be very, very careful about that. When you go in, if I'm interviewing an assistant who doesn't have a lot of experience, if I have somebody who has experience, I'll ask them to tell me about it. But like, if you're fresh out of college or whatever, or just trying to get into coaching, I'm not going to ask you about your X's and O's knowledge, because I don't care, because we're not going to use it.
Right.
It's not going to matter. I know everything there is to know about. We had a coach one time, a new guy. He saw himself as a quarterback guru. And
the old quarterback gurus.
In the interview, he started telling us about his favorite 7-step drop concepts. Brother, you hit that 7th step, you better have dropped deep, because you are getting hit. And I don't know what kind of quarterbacks, a 7-step, what is that, a 9-yard drop?
It's pretty far back there.
Yeah. I need that ball delivered on time, and time has run out. And I was just like, it ain't Dan Fouts, dude. Backpedaling 7 steps.
You just in the conversation there?
No.
Appreciate.
In fact, I think we hired him for the middle school. But
defense.
Yeah, like literally hired him and put him so far away from the quarterbacks, because couldn't help us there. Just couldn't. And eventually he could. Maybe he could. I don't know that he ever knew what he didn't know.
Right.
But arrogance is a red flag. But don't come into an interview and try to impress. And if you're interviewing, don't expect X's and O's knowledge from people who don't have X's and O's experience. Like it's pointless. It's a waste of time. And that's my
back to the beginning.
Yep.
Lots of good stuff here tonight. I think we did check all the boxes. I don't know if we said it or not. Hire your weakness. If you suck at something, please go get somebody that can help you out. It's the same as hiring an expert, right? If you suck at huddle, pick up a huddle guy. Pick up a guy that knows film that can make your life.
Well, that's a good point. Like if you desperately need, even let's say you desperately need an offensive line guy, you should be looking for an offensive line guy. But like nobody on your staff can do it. That's where the head coach probably needs to be ready to step in and do it. But we understand where I'm coming from. Not everywhere is like this. I come from, it is hard to hire assistants, good assistants. And so I think that if you were coaching at a high school in Central Virginia, a 2A or a 3A school like I've been at, and you put an ad out and said, wanted offensive line expert, 20 plus years coaching experience required, the chances of that guy coming to your school are almost zero.
Right.
And more often than not, what I find that coaches are having to do is wanted football coach, send me your resume, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, especially at our level. I think we've talked on here before about, you said you guys, like you have a bunch of old head coaches. Bo Collins is over. I mean, they just went the state championship game last year.
Yep.
There's like 8 former head coaches on that staff. Like the guys with knowledge at this point, because the talent pool is so thin with coaches, they're tired of trying to do this, right?
Yeah.
They're like, I don't even care to hire staff. I'm just going to go be on someone's staff and just be a good coach. You're starting to find clusters of these. All the experience goes and hides over there. So
but
you're not going to pull that out of that situation either. Right?
But when you hire those guys, going back to your question before about how long you expect them to stay, don't expect them to stay long. Right. Take every year you can get. I don't think you should be expecting any of your assistants to stay long. I think you can hire a guy, but like if you're doing a good job, they're going to have opportunities.
Yeah.
That's what you should want. If none of your assistant coaches can ever go get a head coach job, it hasn't gone well. Like I want guys, some coaches don't. I want guys who've either had it. So there's 2 categories of guys that I want. And this isn't everybody, because again, there's some great coaches that have been community guys. I mean, I don't want to sound like community guys are bad. Like I've coached some great community guys, some great parents, who ended up being really good coaches. All of those things happen and are real. But when you're hiring professional football coaches, and when we talk about what's a professional football coach, probably a teacher, or like I'm not a teacher, but I'm clearly a professional football coach. I was a teacher, probably a teacher, somebody who has the time and the schedule. Professional football coach isn't like, yeah, I can get there at like 4:30. It's like practice starts at 3, right? Okay. That's not professional football coach. His life is built around being able to coach football, not the other way. Professional football coach isn't coaching at one school, and if they fire him, he's done. Right? Professional football coach is willing and ready and able to go coach somewhere else to climb the ladder. That's professional football coach. When you're hiring a professional football coach, and these are generally going to be the guys who take your higher level, coordinator positions and assistant head coach and those kinds of positions, A professional football coach, you want one of two guys, and they're not mutually exclusive. You either want somebody who has been a head coach, or you want somebody who wants to be a head coach. And again, that's not 100%. I always go back to Herman Henderson, was the defensive coordinator at Hopewell for 25 years or however long it was, and then he went and helped his sons coach when they got head coaching jobs. They got head coaching jobs. He never got one. He never, as far as I know, never wanted one. He's smarter than everybody else. But in general, look for guys who either have been a head coach or want to be a head coach. And often guys who have been a head coach may want to be a head coach again when the right situation comes up. And you should want those guys on your staff. And if you're successful and if you help them develop the way that they want to and you help them do the things they want to, they should be leaving you at some point or learning that they don't want to be a head coach.
Great points tonight, man. Let's jump into our level up so we don't go for 2 hours tonight.
Yeah. So mine was this weekend. We went down to Myrtle Beach. My wife, thankfully, she did it because I know I wouldn't have. My wife organized this is why you get married, because if you're an only child son who's not good at these things, it won't happen if you don't bring somebody into the fold who does it. Organized the 80th birthday party for my dad. His birthday was January 28th. Birthday was January 28th, but Saturday we had a party a few days before, which was great. We had like 20 family members and friends of Dad's who were down there, and my cousins came down from Outer Banks, and we had my aunt came in from North Carolina, and like people I don't get to see a lot of. So one of my cousins I haven't seen in a few years, and another cousin I hadn't seen in a few years, and so it was really cool. Dad's 80, he's in great shape, and there was like a Instagram thing that I saw or something. I don't know where I saw it because I don't have social media, but it's came up, and it was this woman, this old woman, like what you think of, like what you think an 80-year-old looks like, right? It's white hair, and she's laying down. She's got the glasses. Looks like, you know, the grandma that the wolf ate. You know, Little Red Riding's grandma that the wolf ate, and then he put her glasses and her little nightcap on. And she's laying there with her grandson, and her grandson's like, "Grandma, how old are you?" And she's like, "I'm 83 years old." And he's like, "Wow. So you're almost 100. And she's like, "Yeah." And he goes, "And then you're going to be dead." And the mom that's filming it goes, "Don't say that." And the grandma goes, "I hope so."
Same scenario.
I was telling my dad that, and I'm like, it's funny because everybody that was there, you know, it's my aunts and uncles. They're all older. My mom was the youngest of mom's side. And she'd be 80 in March. And so all of her brothers and sisters are there, and they're older, and, you know, they're 81, 82, 83, Dad's 80. There was one who's 90 there, and they all look like they're fine. Like, you know, they have their things, but like, they're not just like lifeless old people. Right. So yeah, it was funny watching that commercial. I was like, that's what 83-year-olds used to look like.
And the world is changing.
It is.
It's definitely, my wife obviously works in that realm, right?
Yep.
A lot of the people she PTs are, she specializes like elderly folks. And I mean, I tell the story all the time. She's like 103 or 106-year-old woman that was competing like you do in Olympic powerlifting. Like, she started when she was 80. Yep. And got into weightlifting, and then started competing and like breaking world records for age and stuff. I mean, it's just, longevity is and I know I think since 2020, our life expectancy has started decreasing. It's the first time in the history of man or whatever, but ages are so much different, and I think it is that mentality, and I'm glad. That's good. It's good to see people going, but 80 isn't dead. I mean, honestly, 100's a pretty good age to aim for. Like, yeah, you know, I'll give it up then. But until then, like, keep going. Like,
I don't know if it's, you know, I don't know what's changed. I don't want to go into this too long, but my dad talks about, the important things are he stays active, he goes to the gym, he goes for a walk, he is out doing social things. Like he has a more filled social calendar. Like he has Fridays he does like one Friday a month he does like feeding the homeless.
Right.
Sundays he goes to church. Saturday nights are shag dancing night because he's Myrtle Beach. They have that at like the VFW or whatever. And like there's Monday is karaoke night, and so he's got things going on and things to look forward to, and he's out with other people, and he eats healthy and he works out, and it's not a strenuous workout. He's like, I don't work out with weights, I just but he walks and he gets out in the sun, gets outside and stays active. And as long as you can do that stuff, I think that's the longer you can do that, the longer you'll be able to do that kind of thing.
Yeah, movement is medicine.
And I think that's easier now than when maybe we were in less connected societies, when it was less people could go to a gym, or harder to get a bunch of these things are more available probably now
for sure
than they were.
Yep. Once you stop moving, you die. So that's don't stop moving. That's big time. My level up is ChatGPT, because I have. We went through that phase, and I was telling you pre-recording. I don't remember if I saw an article or I read something about it, but there was a time in technology where you looked up everything, and then we went to the Google it thing, right? And you kind of make jokes of it because literally everyone just said Google it, but that was the most efficient way to get information on anything. I found Joe Daniel football by Googling what's the best high school football defense, right? I mean, that's you get good answers. It was a great place to go. And now Chat GPT is the next level of that. And it's almost like if you resist it or don't learn it, you're going to be left behind. Because it's the new Google it. It's no longer like I struggle to code a website. You can just Chat GPT, like, how do I make this thing appear in my website? Or what is a good resume? Like, write me a good resume and you can tell it to find you. Write Daniel Chamberlain's resume for podcasting and in a professional and it just does stuff, right? It's so weird, but it's the next step. I mean, this autonomous, watching Elon's taxi cabs coming out this year or next, whenever it's supposed to be, and like autonomous vehicles or military. We're preparing for autonomous trucks. It's like follow the leader style. Some less soldiers are, out there kind of risking their lives the world's just going to a very autonomous direction. And if you don't get ahead of it, if you don't grab on now, you're quickly going to get left behind. And then you'll be one of these dinosaurs that just doesn't fit anymore. And I mean, I think we had this whole episode. We didn't talk about technology too much, but something's going to pop up eventually, right? At some point, Huddle was the new thing, or digital film, whatever that looked like. No longer cutting and taping film, and then no longer going to get VHSs at the, whatever, the Waffle House on Saturday morning. Like, so it is a good thing to grab a hold of. So I've been starting to dig into it. I know you've been messing with it for like a year or two. I've been kind of put off by it, but I just had to get over it. Like, let's just go. Let's get
it's
attached to it. So
one of the most amazing things that you can learn about ChatGPT for anybody, not you probably already know this, but for anybody who's unsure about what you can do with it or how to use it, the best thing about ChatGPT, and this is probably the thing that separates it from Google the most, is if you ask ChatGPT how to use ChatGPT, it can teach you that.
That's awesome.
So that's the thing, is if you don't know, you don't need a course on how to use ChatGPT you can just say, so I went in and said, I asked ChatGPT about creating a gambling model for NBA, right? Just curious, like what it would look like. And it literally led me down like good, better, best, right? Okay, you can do this, and then it was like, you can scrape ESPN and NBA.com and all these different places for data, and then use ChatGPT's data analysis. And do you want to learn more about that? You can create a Python script to study all of this and make your picks for you? Do you want to learn more about Python? Like, so it's like, this is good, better, best. And, you know, it was kind of like, this is intermediate, this is beginner, this is intermediate, this is advanced. And these are the paths you can go down. And like, do you want me to create a course for you on Python? Do you want me to create a course for you on data scraping? Like, do you like, and then like, so, and literally all I have to do is be like, ChatGPT, help me gamble on the NBA.
Right.
And it will come up with that. If you don't know what ChatGPT can do, you can ask it. Like, how can you, like, you can just go on ChatGPT and say, how can you help me be a better football coach? And it will give you a dozen different ways. And then you can say, give me 12 more, and it will. It is very impressive and amazing. And I still haven't gotten not even scratched the surface of it.
I just typed something in. It's a pretty good one. Build a mock interview for an assistant football coach. This whole time we just had all these conversations, and tell me it doesn't just spit out opening questions, program development, kid development, coach development.
That's awesome.
Like,
yeah.
So, anywho, all right. Well, we'll close it out here, man. I think you got to get into AI now before it runs away, and then you can't. It's, you know, people that didn't learn coding when it started, they struggle now. You know what I mean? So do the thing. Let's pay the bills and get out of here, Joe.
Yeah, check out joedanielfootball.com/system. We've got the ultimate guide to build, or the guide to building your ultimate defensive system. You can download that for free at joedanielfootball.com/system.
System. I like it. System. Go to Patreon. Check me out. I have a YouTube. I don't know. I like to talk about football. If you want to be a guest on the show, especially if you're a JDFB insider and you're already listening to the podcast, guys, we want you to come on and give back to the community. Things you've learned, things you've used the system for, and maybe you found a better way to do things. Maybe you found just another way to do things. I mean, it had to be better, which isn't good, better, best here. Come on, let's talk some football on the show. We want guests. Hit me up, chamberlainfootballconsulting@gmail.com, and I will get you on the show. What cells are opening and closing? This would be approximately mid-February.
I believe we open the offensive play caller system here soon, so be on the lookout for that.
Social media, I am at Coach Chambo OK on Twitter /X. You can email me at chamberlainfootballconsulting@gmail.com. I have a website by the same name, the Patreon, the YouTube. Joe, where are you at?
I am at Joe Daniel Football on, or you can follow Joe Daniel Football. I'll say that. Let me say it that way. You can follow Joe Daniel Football at Joe Daniel Football on Instagram, at Joe Daniel Football on TikTok, on Facebook, facebook.com/Joe Daniel Football, YouTube. Just go to joedanielfootball.com/YouTube. We have like a wonky YouTube link. Yeah,
I wish they'd let people update those.
Google is really weird about letting you change stuff.
Yeah,
really. And since Google owns YouTube,
we couldn't change our business phone number for the first year and a half. It's so strange.
Yeah.
Awesome. If this is your first time listening to the Football Coaching Podcast, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. You can find us on your favorite podcatcher. Mainly Spotify and Apple Podcasts is where the big numbers are. If you're there, you're listening, you like what you're hearing, leave us a review, especially those good ones. 4 or 5 stars is the best. If it's not that, contact us. We'll chat about it. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Football Coaching Podcast. And remember, coach simple, play fast, win.